Welcome to Moments with Mary Ann. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Tom Voss, and he's here to share with us his new book, Where War Ends, a combat veteran's 2,700-mile journey to heal, recovering from PTSD and moral injury through meditation. Now, Tom served as an infantry scout in the 3rd Battalion, 21st Infantry Regiment Scout Sniper Platoon. While deployed in Iraq, he participated in hundreds of combat and humanitarian missions. His journey across America was captured on film by Emmy-nominated documentary filmmaker Michael Collins. The film, titled Almost Sunrise, was released in New York and Los Angeles and has been featured at film festivals nationwide. And in 2017, Almost Sunrise was broadcast nationally as part of a documentary series on PBS, resulting in an Emmy nomination. So let's welcome to the show, Tom Voss.
Thank you for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I saw your book floating around online. A lot of people are sharing it and discussing it, and I had to have you on the show and talk about it. And I've got to ask you, when did you decide was the right time to write this book?
Yeah, it took a while to get to the point of where I felt I needed to write it. And it had been in the back of my mind ever since I had deployed to Iraq, because the experience is so outside of anything I've ever experienced in my life. So I felt that there was a lot of people in my shoes that has that experience, but also family members that also have experiences with loved ones who might not be open to talk about the experiences that they've been through.
Well, that's so important. I know my dad's a veteran. He never would talk with me about any of his past experiences,
Right. Yeah, it's challenging for veterans, and it's hard sometimes when you don't even have the words to express what it is you're feeling or seeing or what you had participated in to begin with.
So why is this important for, family members? Why is your book so important for them?
Well, what I tried to do with my sister Rebecca as we wrote this is really be open and honest about the experiences and why I was behaving the way I was behaving, and really just to be open about the experience of how war impacted me. And I think, that's an insight a lot of family members aren't privy to. And it's kind of a code of silence with veterans. And, we tend to suffer in silence. But I really tried to do my best to be open about the experiences. So hopefully it can build some understanding within family members of loved ones who have served.
Yeah, it really helped me quite a bit just reading your book, kind of gaining a greater understanding of, maybe some of the thought process my father was going through. So I think a lot of times, as people are reading this, they probably are going through the same thing.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too that, we, as a veteran, this was my perspective that, I felt that I was protecting my family and loved ones from these horrible experiences. But, on the reverse side, my family was trying to help me and support me, and they loved me and wanted to be there for me through this time. So there's this disconnect that ended up happening. And I think a lot of veterans just end up riding that out for the long term.
So how did your sister become involved with writing this book with you?
Well, my sister is an extremely talented writer, and I felt that by teaming up with her, she would be able to express better, what I had experienced. So we had a great partnership in creating this memoir, and on top of it, she's my sister as well. So it was really an opportunity for me to sit down with one of my family members and express the experiences that I had in my time in Mosul, and how it impacted me and how I saw things when I came home, and all these things. She was just finding out for the first time as we were writing this together. So it was a great process and a great healing process, I think, for both of us.
So you talk about moral injury in your book. What does that mean? And how does that relate to veterans?
Yeah. So moral injury is being defined as a wound to the soul. So when you witness or participate or fail to prevent acts that go against your own um, moral bearing, or your own moral compass, and this is kind of inherent in war. So we're asking our sons and daughters to go out and basically destroy their own innocence by participating in war and having to kill and having to see civilians killed and all the things that comes with participating in combat. So I think there's inherently a moral conflict built into war, and on top of it, if you can't justify the reasons why you're going to war, there's going to be conflict in the people that are fighting it. So that's something that I think is inherent in war, and in a lot of men and women are suffering from. What did I participate in? Was I justified? Am I a good person? Feelings of grief, guilt, shame. These are the things that are associated with a moral wound.
So when you came back, when did you decide, hey, you know what, I think I need to start walking across America? How did you decide that was a journey that you need to take?
I got to the point of wanting to take my own life. So I knew that if I didn't change something drastically in my life, I would end up being the statistic, and it's every 20 veterans a day are taking their own life. And I've lost 3 friends after combat. So it's something that's very real in my life. And watching your friends pass away, and losing friends in combat, and seeing the statistics around it, I knew that if I didn't act now, that I would end up in that same boat. And it was really just out of a desperation, and to be able to remove myself from my environment and really try to focus on the things that I experienced and process a lot of the trauma that I experienced. And I just never had time to do that. And I was trying to jump back into my life and catch up with my peers, and go back to school, get a full-time job, all the things that come with reintegrating back into the civilian sector. So these were all challenges that I was experiencing for about 10 years. And I finally got to the point of contemplating suicide, and I said, before I do that, I'm going to put in one big effort push to see if I can try to feel a little better.
So when you decided to take this journey, why don't you share with our audience like the trails you took, and how did you decide like what portion of this trip you're going to take?
Yeah, so I teamed up with another Iraq War veteran, Anthony Anderson, and we basically, took where we wanted to end, which was the Santa Monica Pier, and then started to backwards plan. So we stuck to county highways and country back roads most of the way. Sometimes we jump on bike trails and on places that we're kind of on paths, directly. So we did 7 states in 5 months, and it was Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado. Then we went south to New Mexico, Arizona, then through the Mojave Desert into California, and finishing at the Santa Monica Pier. So just over 5 months that it took us to do that.
Well, I can understand wanting to end at the Santa Monica Pier.
yeah. Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice place to kind of, just kind of be and be there. And, during this journey, were there some things that were kind of like aha moments that really stuck out for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that we met along the way. And, when I went into this, I didn't know that there was, I didn't really have a plan. I just knew that I needed to act. I didn't know how it was going to look. I didn't know how my own personal healing would look. But through the process of walking across the country, we were able to meet just amazing people that didn't even know us and wanted to support us and really help build trust back in us as veterans. Was really important for us.
Did you have a lot of support from veteran groups as you went on this trip?
Yeah, we had a lot of support from veterans groups, and VFW's American Legion. There's a VFW in New Mexico that ended up, getting us a hotel and supporting us, and then bringing us out to their place to, have a big dinner and stuff like that. So there was a lot of veterans that we would meet along the way. Then they would, what they would end up doing is reaching out to their, counterparts in a different state and let them know that we were coming, and would, hand us off to other people in different areas when they could. So we had a lot of support. And then on top of that, I think we had almost 4,000 people following us on Facebook as well.
It seems that you had a lot of support on this journey,
Yeah.
and it's so nice to hear that, because I think our veterans and our service members go through so much, and the least we could do is support them.
Yeah. And we went into this with the mentality that it's just going to be us, and it's going to be, we have to have everything on our backs. And, we found out real quick that, there's a lot of people that were behind us in our own healing journey. So that was really something that really, I think, pushed us to be able to finish the 5-month walk.
That's a long walk. You guys covered a lot of territory in, 5 months. It would take me a lot longer than that.
I mean, to put it in some perspective, it took us a whole month to walk across the state of Nebraska. So it's a big state.
Yeah, they could seem like a never-ending walk, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because on top of it, we always have these thoughts of what each state looks like, and what they represent and all that kind of stuff. But basically, from Wisconsin to eastern Colorado, all we had was soybean and cornfields, the whole way, pretty much. So it all kind of ran together until we got to the Rockies.
Oh, the Rockies are gorgeous. So that's a whole nother territory there. But
exactly.
Yeah, that must have been just a remarkable trip that you guys, undertook.
Yes, it was.
So I know you share about, and we won't go into detail on that because you do share in your book about, getting to a place of forgiveness, and so for our listeners that are looking to do that themselves, I felt like your book is good for anybody looking to get to a place of forgiveness for maybe something they've done or experienced.
Yeah. And I always like to say this, that, people always tend to compare their traumas, right? I get a lot of people coming up to me, and whenever I give talks and traveling around the country, and, they tell me like, oh, my stuff is not anywhere near, yours. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that, the trauma that we have and the experiences that we have are valid to us. And that, just because you didn't serve or deploy or, fight in a war doesn't mean that your experiences aren't valid. So, when we wrote this, we understood that a lot of people might have similar experiences. It might not be out of the context of war. So really trying to, understand, how do we get out, from these challenging experiences in our life. And in my experience, forgiveness has been a really big part of that. Releasing these past grudges or, conflicts or, whatever they might be. We just tend to hold on to those things. So being able to, forgive yourself, forgive other people is something really worth exploring when you're in when you're in the proper space to start working on that stuff.
Well, it's interesting. No one comes with a guidebook on how to work through forgiveness. And it's something that we have. I mean, we all get to places where we're like, I think the self-forgiveness part's really tough. I mean, we might be able to forgive our friends or family members, but ourselves, it's like, ooh, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. And for me, it's really exploring the concept of being sincere. Right. So, we can always forgive people or say we're not mad at people or whatever, but deep down there might be some still residual stuff there. So it's not, like you're saying, it's not always an easy aspect to really dive into. But, at the end of the day, when you're able to release a lot of this stuff and you're coming from a really sincere place, and, you don't want to, hold on to these grudges anymore. They're not things that serve us, so they end up actually doing more damage to to us, and negative self-talk and all these different things that, how we're not, treating ourselves well, and taking care of ourselves. So that, plays into the whole aspect of forgiveness. And for me, that's really the only way I found out of a lot of the suffering that I was going through.
Yeah. Well, I know you talk about the differences between post-traumatic stress, moral injury, and post-traumatic growth, and I'd love for you to share that with our listeners.
Yeah. So post-traumatic stress, and I just, preface this with, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a mental health care provider, but from my experience, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress in 2008. I got out of the military in 2006, got out of the Army. So post-traumatic stress to me was a conditioning of my nervous system. Anyone who's in a dangerous situation for an extended period of time, your body adapts to that kind of situation. So, and it's kind of an extreme situation to be in war. So anyone who, is in a prolonged exposure of dangerous, life-threatening environment for a long period of time will tend to develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress. So it's not something that's really abnormal. It's just abnormal in the sense that very few people experience war. So it's a small percentage. And you can get post-traumatic stress from a car accident or witnessing a car accident, seeing someone hurt. There's many different things. And so your nervous system kind of holds on to these events and traumatic experiences. And they, manifest as, getting flashbacks, having insomnia, depression, anxiety. And those are just a few of the symptoms of the symptom cluster that they call post-traumatic stress. So moral injury, as I kind of touched on before, was, when you're have a moral conflict in your own behavior. Who am I as a person now that I've participated in war? So I think post-traumatic stress and moral injury can exist simultaneously and on top of each other. That makes it a lot more complex. And I think one of the challenges that we're running into is that people are experiencing moral injury but being treated for post-traumatic stress when maybe post-traumatic stress isn't the most prominent thing. So now you're medicating someone for moral injury symptoms, and they're trying to rectify with themselves. So the cool part is post-traumatic growth is how are we taking these experiences and transforming them into not just resiliency, but thriving, right? So how do we take these experiences, incorporate them into our lives, being able to learn the lessons that have been given to us, and apply those lessons to our lives, and be able to turn around and use these experiences for good. And I think that a lot of veterans naturally gravitate towards this, whether it's through peer support or wanting to help other veterans. And that's the beauty about post-traumatic growth, is that there is a way out, and there's a way up, and there's a way to continue to move up. But it takes a lot of work, and yet I don't want to downplay that. But at the end of the day, at the end, you want to be moving towards a growth mindset, right? So you want to be able to use these negative experiences to turn into a positive, and then go out and continue to educate and help other people who have similar experiences.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it makes such a difference when you're able to, get to a place where you can find some inner peace. And it's interesting because, 20 years ago, they were like, oh, your brain's kind of, it's done. And we've learned so much more since then that, there's a lot of healing that can take place.
Yeah. Yeah. And in my experience too, is that, it's just putting that effort in. And I think when you put that effort in, and that's, again, going back to coming from a sincere place, like I want to feel better. I'm done feeling this way. That is the driving force behind a lot of the change that I experienced.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's talk about, when did you start getting into meditation and yoga?
Yeah, was introduced to meditation as I was walking across the country, and it was something that I slowly started to incorporate into my daily routine. So it was pretty challenging for me at first to learn how to meditate, and at that point, my mind was at unrest most hours of the day. So to be able to even sit for 10 minutes was something that was really challenging for me. So I learned as I was walking across the country, and slowly started to integrate the practice. And then after my walk, I ended up taking a breath-based meditation workshop that's hosted by a nonprofit called Project Welcome Home Troops. And then after that experience, I learned a pretty substantial going home practice, and it was something that made me feel better. And that was something that was really new to my experience. So I knew that there was something valid to it. And that's, how you have to approach it is almost like a scientist, right? You're experimenting with yourself and your mind, and seeing what works and what doesn't, and what feels good and what doesn't. And at that point in my life, I was, I wasn't really worried about the optics of going into a yoga or meditation class. I was more concerned with, how I felt. And, if you go back to 2006, you wouldn't have caught me dead in a yoga or meditation class for sure. I was in the infantry at a super hyper masculine environment, So, but at that point, it's really finding out what makes you feel good and what makes you happy, and what, how is that sustainable? And finding meditation was really beneficial for me, because one, it was something that I could do wherever I was. And once I learned it and learned the techniques and the breathing techniques and all that stuff, no one can take that away from me. I have that knowledge, the rest of my life. And now I have tools that I can start adding to my toolkit to help manage stress.
Well, it's interesting too, because the discussion and just the viewpoint of meditation and yoga have really shifted. And you're seeing a lot of first responders getting into workshops using that kind of information to find their own inner peace. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah. First responders, police officers, firefighters. I mean, these people are dealing with extremely stressful situations day in and day out. Also, they're having a lot of suicide problems in their communities as well. So we have to start looking at more practical tools that people can use to manage their own stress. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Are we able to manage the stress and find healthy ways of coping with it? Because it's coming regardless, if you want it or not.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
and for those that are starting meditation, I mean, when I first started, it's a journey. It's not like you're going to, sit for 5 minutes and, and then be a yogi master, or
Right.
Buddha master.
Right.
I mean, it takes time. It's, it's not like you're going to get out and all of a sudden, being a new person, walk, a 2,000-mile journey. You need to practice.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing every day for the last 6 years, and it is still challenging. There's sometimes where I have meditations where my mind is completely all over the place. So it's really just kind of understanding that regardless of what your mind feels is good or bad or whatever, you're still getting health benefits from being able to sit quietly, either having a mantra-based meditation or mindfulness meditation or whatever, wherever you start. It's incredibly beneficial for the body.
So how did you decide on the title? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So we were really interested in really focusing on the after, because a lot of when we linked up with New World Library, our publisher, they came off the bat right away saying, everyone knows the horrors of war. There's so many countless books of detailing, what happens and what happened to people in traumatic events and all this stuff. So we really wanted to try to focus on, what happens after the fact, because we're not really taking a look and really accounting for the true costs of war. So we say X amount of soldiers or Marines or sailors died in combat, but we're not tracking the people who die by suicide or end up becoming homeless, or have mental health issues that go untreated, or end up becoming addicted and estranged from their families. And these are all symptoms of participating in war. So really looking at, what happens after, and that's really where we wanted to focus our book. And I think Where War Ends is a great title to, look at, almost like personal responsibility, which we kind of talk about a lot in the book. And finding inner peace, starts with you, and then the war can also end with you. So that really goes back to that concept of taking responsibility for your own healing.
Yeah, that's so important. And a lot of times people just don't understand that there's a way out. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about your book is that, while you're taking this journey, there's a lot of realizations that take place, but it also is, like, in many ways, a roadmap for other veterans or people who are suffering from PTSD or moral injury to be able to get to a place of, inner peace.
Yeah. And I always say that, my story is one story. It's not the story. And same with, these healing modalities. Some might work for someone, some might not work for another person. But at the end of the day, it's getting up and having to continue to try to find different avenues to feel better and move through a lot of the stuff you experience.
So, what final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think that, looking at healing, from a larger perspective, is that it is a journey. And, I think we fall into the trap of, one day I'm going to be healed, better, I'm going to be, or back to how I was. And I think we're just in this progression of life that we continuously build understanding of ourselves and how we interact in the world. And we just kind of continue to go on with that. So moving out of the mindset of, one day I'm going to be all better or back to how I was, and really shifting to, I'm continuously going to grow. And that is my healing journey. And that is my path, is, continuously pushing myself, putting myself in, situations that will help me grow as a person, versus, wanting to stay how things are, or how they were, or go back to, how we perceive them to be, kind of a thing. So at the end of the day, it's up to you. I like to tell the story of, my sister was the first person that ever got me to go in and see a clinical social worker. But it really didn't end up working for me because, one, I wasn't being sincere about it, and two, I was going for my sister. I was going for my family. So it wasn't coming from a sincere place in my heart that I wanted to feel better and that I wanted to do better as a person. I was just going through the motions. So at the end of the day, if it all comes back to you, do you want to be better? Do you want to feel better? You have to take that responsibility. And when you're able to take that responsibility, you actually take power back in your life. And then you can start making the decisions of how you want to start your healing process.
Yeah, what a huge note to kind of end our discussion on, because a lot of times people, they either think it's not possible, or it's just going to be too hard, I'll never obtain it, and so they get kind of stuck.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's like you have to verify that it's not going to work, right? So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up, going to talk therapy, doing all these different, traditional modalities, and be like, this is not it. This is not it. This doesn't make me feel better, right? And continuously have to go through and check the boxes and see that they don't work, because our minds can take us into the space of why even try, which is, a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really kind of tough then. Well, and I understand that, your journey was also kind of filmed and made into a documentary, right?
Yeah. It's Almost Sunrise, and that's available on Amazon, iTunes, and YouTube. And that is an amazing a piece of work done by the director, Michael Collins, about our journey across the country.
Is that something they can get on your website too?
There's a link to it on my website at themeditatingvet.com. And there's other resources there as well, nonprofit resources, stuff like that for people that are interested in checking those out.
And so they can connect with you there. Why don't you give the website one more time?
Yeah, my website is themeditatingvet.com, and feel free to reach out. There's a contact page there, and I'm usually pretty good about responding to people when I can. So if it's a family member or a veteran or someone else who has experienced trauma outside of the context of the military too, feel free to reach out. Happy to help and support any way that I can.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about your new book, Where War Ends. Where War Ends is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And of course, you can find the book on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just what moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Friday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.